Just imagine, you want to keep a Volvo, but you also want to kick the antique dealing habit. Look no further. I don't think anybody's going to like that joke. May I present to you the Volvo C30. This is one of those cars that I'm going to insist you see the cuteness of. I think it's lovely, but it's not as small as it looks. And when did Volvo become cute? Well, I would say when they made this car. Oddly enough, the back end reminds me of one of those ladies of the night, but not one of those drug-addled ones. It's got to do with this big rounded bumper here and these rear lamps that jut out like that. They remind me of ladies' parts. And what a direction to go in straight away, right at the beginning of the video. But that's just how I see it. I'm talking about the kind of lady parts that I like. And then we go down the side and we see this lovely big rounded and again feminine shoulder that goes from one end of the car all the way to the other. You might think that shoulders like these are really masculine. I mean, they would be if they had hard edges on, but this one doesn't. It takes that line, of course, from the V70 from a few years previous. And although this is going to end up with a huge compromise in space on the inside, it doesn't half look good from the outside. Much more of the corporate face at the front with that grille, of course. Looks like it's wearing its seatbelt right the way across its face, and part of the badge is rather male looking as well. The bumper has this kind of turned up lip look about it, so that the bonnet can remain mostly featureless, but somehow with the rest of the car looks very stylish. I really like this car from every angle. I think it looks excellent. Not only that, it doesn't seem to turn into another car if you squint, except for possibly Volkswagen Scirocco just at that point. Let's do the door shut sound. Here we go. Quite purposeful. Interesting aerial. Looks like the orbital path of a few planets in diagram form. The interior has much of this. Oh, what? The interior suits the exterior, and it looks really purposeful and heavy duty. Look how thick that is there. Look how thick the wall is. Look how thick the door is. Look how Swedish the seats look. They're fantastic. Oh, go back to A was. Although I do think the handbrake design is rather weird. Then we have the famous floating center console. Slidey bits. Small bin, and the whole thing is much more premium feeling than the Focus that it's based on. I mean, it is loosely based on it. It's the same platform, but the interior is different and the exterior is completely different. The engines may be the same and some of the gearboxes as well, but the engines aren't really the problem. Not on this era of Ford anyway. Now, I really do like these seats, and there's an awful lot of front leg room as well. If I push this back all the way, I can barely press the clutch down. It's a car that's good for tall people, but only two of them, because if you want to go in the back, you may as well just forget about it. As far as legroom's concerned, it actually doesn't have any at all. But the car is really rather beautiful in design. I think it's for left-handed people though. Personally, I never really saw the point in having your key there or there where Saab have it. It just, you know, it just feels wrong. And I'm sure the Swedish are using a kind of logic that us people in Britain just can't really quite understand. Anyway, back to the point. Steering wheel, all rather nice with these. I actually felt a bit like it had some sort of cover on it to start with, but of course it's just a steering wheel with a bit of design other than just being flat at the bottom. And then the controls here do actually feel quite nice as well. Nice buttons, and be careful which ones I do press. And then the heating control, all done with a diagram of the person that it's there to control. that shows you where the airflow is going to be going. You could have it on your face, you could have it on your torso, or you could have it on your feet. And an awful lot of different fan speeds available as well. My car has 4 fan speeds: 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, it might even be 20. Behind the floating centre console we have a little storage area there. That's to put things in that you don't mind losing. If we open up the glass tailgate, we find a boot that is, well, small and very rather narrow as well. Not just by Volvo standards, not just by car standards, but by small car standards, because this boot is shallow and narrow, although it's reasonably long, I suppose. Underneath the very lightweight bonnet we find a Ford 1.6 litre petrol engine that says Volvo in it. That is the smallest engine you can have in a Volvo C30, because other than that there is the 1.8 and a 2 litre and a 2.4 and a 2.5 litre turbocharged diesel. Yes, they did a diesel as well, but not just one diesel. No, they thought, why not give you a whole raft of choices with diesel engines? So then we have a 1.8, a 2 litre and a 2.4, and I find myself thinking, why not just have 2? It drives exactly as you'd expect it to. Really secure feeling, steering's good, gear change is nice and slick. The seat is very comfortable, brakes also quite nice, but with this engine it is... with this engine it doesn't really have a great deal of go, let's say, but it's adequate. But it drives really nicely. It's nice and smooth and quiet and all the other things you want from a relatively modern car. But how modern is this? I mean, this is a 2010 car, so it's already onto its 14th year. Yet, like many modern cars, they don't really look that old. The C30 came out in 2006, which is even longer ago than what this car was made, and they went on for a good many of a year until they replaced it with the less inspirational and less stylish C40. What about the origins of this car then? 2006 may have been the year that they brought it back, but it was still inspired by the 1986 480, which was a Volvo and a very weird looking car indeed. And I mean a weird looking car, even for a normal car, but for a Volvo, extra weird looking. Volvo's forward thinking around a time that never actually happened, with that funny slanted front end. But I guess the main inspiration they took from that car was indeed the glass boot lid, which looks rather interesting and certainly distinctive. And I like a distinctive car, which is where, to my mind at least, they went ever so slightly wrong when they replaced this one with a C40, because it became less of a distinctive car and more of a car that just looked like it's just one that's joined the lineup. This is a car that was definitely aimed at Volvo people, or people like this kind of quality of car, because obviously its lack of practicality means that it's not really competing with the Focus, which it's based on. But the Focus is just so much less interesting. This is not only more interesting to look at, but more interesting to be inside, more interesting to press the buttons, and more interesting to talk about in a video. As you have probably gathered by now, I really do like this car. If I was one of those people that gave things a mark out of 10 for how much I liked it, I would definitely say for its looks, 10 out of 10. I think it's a fabulous looking car. I think the interior is fabulous. But there's one thing I don't like about it, to be picky. I would say it's because it's got one of those naff carpets, whereas Volvo managed to still fit a decent carpet to the V70s. Did they do it at this age though? I don't know. And to compare this again with the Focus, which it's based on loosely, I know that if I was to take out a Mark II Focus for a test drive, I'd quite enjoy it. I'd enjoy the drive, but I don't think I would really be into the long-term owning experience. Whereas I would do with this. I can just tell that I would be happy to run a car that looks like this. Noticing quite a few V40s about actually, and actually they're not, when it comes to think of it, they are quite good looking. They're just not as distinctive as this one. I reckon I would very happily daily this car, even though it hasn't got the engine that I'd like. I would ideally like something with a bit more poke. I'm used to having a bit more poke, and I don't want to not have any more poke. Always a good sign I'm enjoying a car when I find myself not wanting to take it back to the yard, and instead just driving round housing estates, which aren't particularly interesting, for the purpose of just trying out the speed hump test. What I didn't mention is the safety equipment on this car, but it's a Volvo. We know it's going to have a lot. In fact, if you want a small and stylish car, you're not really going to get any better than this. I might even go as far as to say you wouldn't get any better than this. Even down to the key looking like an alcohol breath test. Oh. That's a bit annoying. Whereas most cars can be really annoying because the alarms go off all by themselves, this one has its buttons so you can do it in case it isn't doing and you want to piss your neighbours off. Now that is the end of the video, except that I'm going to bung in the bits at the end that I didn't really deem to be that suitable for viewing, because I didn't think anyone would watch it any further if they saw it. But bear with me, because I don't want to get too distracted by the back end of this car. But the rear lamp clusters do look like ladies' boots. For ladies with very big feet, of course, and somehow one with the ankles twisted to the point in the opposite directions. This bit just looks really surprised by it all. She would be, wouldn't she? A lovely lady of the night just trying to do her business, and suddenly she finds herself walking like that.